I'm just going to reshare. Let me see if I can find where the Zoom is. Let's see. Okay, this messed me up a little bit. We'll figure this out in a second. I have to share. Tazai. Okay, could the Olim see the Gemara?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're 6 lines down on the from the top of Daf Lamed Amud Aleph, and we're discussing a very important machlokes if yesh no l'shchita mitchila b'tzoif or if ein l'shchita el b'tzoif. Now we know the critical part of the shchita is when you cross over from miyut of the siman to roiv of the siman. So is that where the shchita is, and up until then you're stump cutting? Or no, the whole time that you're cutting, even from the beginning of the siman, that's also part of the Maisha Shchita. The Gemara said the nafkamina would be if you're shechting both simonim and you're shechting them b'chutz, and right before you cross the finish line, you move into the Beis HaMikdash. Would that be called shchutei chutz? If the shchita up until you hit roiv was part of the shchita, if yeshno l'shchita mitchila b'tzoif, then you were over shchutei chutz. But if you hold ein l'shchita el l'b'tzoif, so when did you cross the finish line from miyat siman to roiv siman? You were in the azara, and therefore it's not considered shchutei chutz. That's what the Gemara remained with as far as one of the nafkaminas between these two talking. So, Frank the Gemara, Masiv Rab Idi Bar Avin, Rab Idi Bar Avin has a kasha. Now, we know the halacha is a carbon Pesach that you shech not on Pesach is a shlomin. Now, the question is, does it automatically become a shlomin, or must you uproot its designation of a carbon Pesach and make it into a shlomin? So, we have another halacha. It says, when you're shechting the carbon Pesach, if you have any chametz in your reshus, you're mechuyev in alav, you're mechuyev malchus. In addition to that, the Gemara in Pesachim teaches us that any carbon that a yid brings over Pesach, if he has any chametz in his reshus, besides the petch that he gets for having chametz, he gets a separate set of malchus for bringing a carbon when he has chametz in his rishos, and that's the aver of l'sizbach al chametz damzer. But what happens if you're shechting a parcel of carbon? If you're shechting a parcel of carbon, then avada you're not going to be mechuyev malchus. It's only if you're shechting a kosher carbon. And based on that, zok the gebraisa uvemoyed lishmoy potter. If you shechted a carbon Pesach, now let's say you shechted a carbon Pesach b'moed and chalamoid, how would it come that you should shecht a carbon Pesach on chalamoid? You shecht a carbon Pesach on Erev Pesach. So Zokt Rashi, what happened is on Erev Pesach you were ready to bring your carbon Pesach and you lose the carbon Pesach. Because you lost the carbon Pesach, you quickly bought another carbon Pesach, and then on chalamoid you found the original Pesach. And now you're shechting it. So on Chalamoid, you're shechting this extra carbon Pesach. If you shecht it l'shmoy, if you shecht it l'shem carbon Pesach, that will be possible. Because if you shecht the carbon Pesach, not on Erev Pesach, that's a possible carbon. So uvemoyed, on Chalamoid, l'shmoy, if you shechted it l'shem carbon Pesach, potter, you're going to be potter from the lav of l'sizbach al chometz dam zivchi, because this wasn't a kosher carbon. You'll only get malchus for l'sizbach if it was a kosher carbon. Shechting a carbon Pesach on Pesach, that's a possible carbon. Zok the Gemara, l'shmoy potter. What does l'shmoy potter mean? Because there's really three options: l'shem Pesach, l'shem shlomim, or stoma. So Rashi tells us, and we're going to see quite clearly in a minute from the Gemara, that l'shmoi potter means, say if you specifically articulated, I'm shechting it l'shem Pesach, say if you didn't say anything, stoma, even if you didn't say anything, l'shmoi will be potter. So if you stam shechted this leftover carbon Pesach on Chalamoid, you're potter because it's a possible carbon, because it retains its designation as a carbon Pesach, and if you shech the carbon Pesach on Chalamoid, it's possible. But shaloi l'shmoi. But if you articulated beferish, I'm shechting this carbon Pesach l'shem shlamim, and we know the norm is that a Pesach that you shech shar yemois hashana besides on Erev Pesach is a shlamim. From this brayse, it's mashma that it doesn't become a shlamim by itself. It doesn't morph into a shlamim. You have to designate it as a shlamim, and you have to be mevatel its original identity as a Pesach. So shaloi l'shmoi, you shechted it on Chalamoid, an extra carbon Pesach, and you specifically said this is being shechted l'shem shlamim. That's a perfectly kosher carbon, and therefore chayiv, you'll be chayiv malchus for leisis. That's what the brisa said. Va'avinon bo, and the Gemara asked the kasha on this brisa. Time of the shaloi l'shmoi. The only reason why you're chayiv if you shechted it l'shem shlamim is because you said beferish l'shem shlamim. Ha shtama, if you just shechted it plain, potter, because the assumption is that it remains a chatos. I'm sorry, it remains a Pesach, and a Pesach that you shecht on Chalamoid is possible. Correct, Gemara, v'amai potter. Why should it be potter? Pesach b'shar yemois hashana shlomavu. If you're shechting a carbon Pesach on Chalamoid, shouldn't it automatically morph into a shlomim? Yet from this brayse you see it doesn't. You see stoma, it still has the din of a carbon Pesach. V'amai potter. Pesach b'shar yemois hashana shlomavu. Shmami no. You know what the Gemara proves from here? The Pesach b'shar yemois hashana boyakira. We don't say that the carbon Pesach b'shar yemois hashana automatically morphs into a carbon shlamim. No, it just means you must now designate it as a carbon shlamim. But if you didn't, it still remains a Pesach, and that's why if you shechted it stoma, it's potter because it's a possible carbon. You shechted it shem shlamim, you're chayiv because it's a kosher carbon. V'yomer Reb Chia bar Gamda, and Reb Chia bar Gamda told us that I want to say over what the Olam said pshat about this brisa in the Bes Medrash. Nizra kami pichabura. It was spritzed out from the chabura, meaning we told all the learning and we came to the conclusion. V'amur, and then we said, hacha b'may askinon, because right away everybody should be making a face at me. Is it logical that stoma Pesach b'shar yemois hashana is a Pesach unless you change it? By default, it should go to a shlamim even without saying that beferish, because it's not there of Pesach, and you can't shecht it. It's obvious that you can no longer shecht this as a carbon Pesach. So why do you have to specify to make it into a shlamim? Why doesn't it morph into a shlamim by itself?
So Yosy, sorry, so isn't the carbon Pesach, aside from shechting it, that I put it on a spit and spun it? Forget the shechting.
That's a much later point. That's after you are makir or after you spritz its dam, so then you take the meat and eat it. But the kashrus of the carbon comes from the shchita and the kabbalah and the ilacha and the zrika.
Yeah, but it's the carbon Pesach that I have a chiyuv of eating with matzah, and it's more, but I'm not sure it's the oraisa, but it's that spinning on the spit that shows me what the carbon is. Because the zrika I didn't see. I don't see that.
What designates the carbon as a chatos is the shchita. It's not a blank carbon until you cook the meat. By the time you shechted it, it's already designated.
No, but by eating the meat, it showed me what I had in mind in the beginning.
No, eating the meat means you're just following through on what the halach of a Pesach is. But that doesn't make it into the Pesach. What makes it into the Pesach is when you originally bought the animal and you designated it for your carbon Pesach.
When I overpaid for the meat to buy it, that's what made it into the carbon Pesach. Right? I said that for Effie's benefit, but It starts even really before that, I guess, when you even designate it as a side, even for Korban Pesach.
The moment you bought it with the communal funds of everybody who, one guy is the syndicator. So the guy who syndicated the deal, he bought it on behalf of everybody else.
Right.
So it's bought, it's already designated to be a chatas. It's like saying harezu oila, harezu chatas, harezu pesach.
I know, but you see, those shlomim are all eaten the same way later, and then only find out, oh, what did we have in mind to serve? What was the idea? But here, when I took it and I put it on the spit and I made everybody sit around chalamoid and eat it like a Korban Pesach, that showed me what I had in mind originally.
That has nothing to do with the carbon.
Oh, well, I think it does. I think it does have to do with the carb. I know you're right. The shechting was independent to it, but it shows what I had in mind to it. That's what I'm. You know,
you see, when it comes to karbonis, we learned having in mind doesn't just mean mentally thinking about it. It must be articulated, and it must be articulated b'shas shchita. B'shas shchita, it must be articulated. It doesn't matter if you do something later that shows what you were thinking before. It always has to be articulated verbally.
Except the Kohen when he does pigul.
No, he has to do that verbally as well. He has to say, I am shechting this with the intent of eating it chutz l'zmanoi or chutz l'koima. Pigul just b'machshava will not possible. Every machshava that we find in Kochim means it was articulated.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see what the
okay.
So Zok to Gemara, you know what we said? It's not logical to say that a Korban Pesach after Pesach doesn't morph automatically into a shlomim, because at this point I don't need to say anything. It can't be a Pesach. It's obviously going to be a shlomim. The brisa here that says stoma is l'shem Pesach, hacha b'may yaskinon kagoyin shoyu bailim temei mason. It wasn't a case where you had a Korban Pesach and you lost it and now you found it on Cholamoid. That for sure is stoma going to be a shlomim. The case that the brisa says that stoma is a Korban Pesach is if on Erev Pesach the members of the group were tamei, and because of that they got an alom and igara and they got delayed to Pesach Sheni. So now we're on Cholamoid. We have this animal. This animal is still very much a Korban Pesach, and everybody still has full intent of holding it until Yudal Iyar to shecht it as a Pesach Sheni. So there you say, if you shechted it stoma on Chalamoid, that's going to be a pasul of carbon, and you won't be chayiv al Bach, because that still retained its name as a Pesach, because you're holding on to it, because you're going to use it for Pesach Sheni. So hagav ma'yiskina and kagoyin you buy them tamei mason, the nidchen le Pesach Sheni. And there, the stoma l'shmoi koi. In that case, stoma the carbon is the Korban Pesach. V'haihu the haboy akira davke what needs an akira from the Shem Korban Pesach to Shlomim? This Korban Pesach, because it's still destined to be brought as a Korban Pesach, Pesach Sheni. Ha'acher, but the previous case where you lost your Korban Pesach, and you replaced it, and now you found it on Chalamoid, loy boy akira. Now you don't have to articulate that I'm making it into a shlomim. That defaults on its own to a shlomim. Oops. So that is the brisa that we quoted. Now the Gemara is going to use the brisa that we just quoted to prove the shaila of yeshna l'shchita mitchila b'atzoif or ein l'shchita el b'atzoif. So we just determined that the brisa is talking about a case where we had a Korban Pesach and we became tameh. Therefore, this animal retains its status as a Korban Pesach, and if he shechts it on Cholamoid, stoma, he'll be potter because it's a pasul of carbon. The question is why. Zok the Gemara, I'armit b'shlomo yeshna l'shchita metchila b'atzoif. If you will, the moment you start cutting the neck of this animal, that's already called a shchita. That means I started to shech this Korban Pesach not on the right day. Therefore, if zolei mitchila shchita, it becomes pasul right away, and that now the brisa makes perfect sense. The moment you started shechting, it's pasul. Once it's a pasul of carbon, you won't get malchus for the sizbach al chametz. If you're going to tell me ein l'shchita ela b'soif, That means only when I cross the finish line, only there is it called a shchita, then this should be a kosher carbon. Why? Because kivan de shachet beporta, the moment you start cutting the neck, it's not yet a shchita, but you're cutting the neck. You made it into a treifel, technically. So the moment you cut it a little bit, that's the best and most strongest and most clearest articulation of the fact that I don't want to use this for a carbon pesach. Because once you start cutting its neck, there's no way it's going to survive anymore until you have to shecht it an ER, and even if it does, it's a balmum. So the moment you shechted it, that's an articulation. I don't want this to be a pesach. I want this to be a shlomim. But you didn't shecht it yet, because the beginning cut is not even part of the shechita until you get to the finish line. So therefore, kiven the shachet beporta, the moment you started cutting the neck of the animal, idchel mi pesach, that's like announcing it's going to be a shlomim. The idich kika shachet. So as you continue the shechita and you cross the finish line, shlomim kashachet. You're shechting a perfectly kosher carbon shlomim, and therefore you should be over leisizbech al chametz dam zivchi. So, frag the Gemara, if you hold it in the shechita lebesoif, how can we explain the brisa that says that stama, if you shechted a chalamoid, it's a pasul carbon because it's a carbon pesach. It should really be a kosher carbon, which is a carbon shlomim. Zok the Gemara, Amalei Abaye. I'll tell you pshat. Nehide itchilei mi pesach. Granted, this can no longer be brought as a carbon pesach. It's a balmum. It has a slashed neck, but that doesn't mean it's a shlomim. Midmei pesach mi itchi. At this point, it's a balmum. It could be redeemed for money, and that money will be used to buy the carbon pesach that they're going to bring by Pesach Sheni. So therefore, it didn't lose its designation as a carbon pesach the moment you cut its neck. No, it just goes from a carbon pesach of a kedusha leguf to a carbon pesach of kedusha mammon. And therefore, since it's still a carbon pesach, if you shecht it completely, that's a pasul of carbon, and there's no chiyuv of l'shizbek l'chamet. Frank the Gemara, how could you be poida this animal that you've partially shechted? V'chitema boy hamod of arach. In order to be poida any psula mikdoshim, you cannot be poida nevela. You could only be poida psula mikdoshim that are alive enough that they could stand up and be assessed. But this is a dead animal. It's halfway shechted. Zok Gemara, that's not a problem, because Vatnan we learn shachat b'shnayim or roib shnayim. Even if the animal is completely shechted already, but it still has nerves and it could still stand even though it's dead, you can still do the assessment and you could still be poida this animal as psulei hamikdashim. Beautiful. But although the lumdus, I find the lumdus of Chullin is much easier and geschmacker to understand than the lumdus that we had in Zvach. What I find very challenging in Maseches Chullin is the mitzias, because Tosfos asks an obvious question. Let's paint this scenario. You started cutting the neck of the animal. You're in Dazar. You're starting to cut the neck of the animal. And what is the Gemara suggesting? Even though you cut the neck of the animal, it still retains its status of a carbon pesach because it'll be paided. So exactly how are you going to do that? If you take it out of the Azara and you paid it, so that means you made shehiyah on your shechita. Now it's a nevela. You can't be paid a nevela because a nevela can only be fed to dogs. Psuli HaMikdashim, you can't be paid to feed to dogs. You can only be paid to Psuli HaMikdashim if you're going to be able to eat it. Elamai, what are you going to suggest? That right there in the Azara, you finish shechting. Well, if you do that and you're paid it while you're shechting, come to Chayis, it's Chullin. You're not allowed to shecht Chullin in the Azara. So practically speaking, how would this pigeon and shechita work simultaneously? That it shouldn't be Chullin Bazar. Zok Tosfos, a wild case. It's speaking that he shechted part of it, right then and there, he could be paid it without stopping the shechita and simultaneously moving out of the Azar. So imagine the guy has to be on some type of platform with wheels, doing a shechita on giving money, and someone's rolling the platform out of the Azara, so by the time he's up to the Roiv, crossing the finish line, he's no longer in the Azara, and he's shechting Chullin out of the Azara. So again, the Metzias is very unusual, and we're going to have a lot of cases today with very unusual Metziasin, but the concepts, the lumdis, are very clear in Geshmak. Zog the Gemara weiter. Omer Rav Yehuda, Omer Rav. Hashoichet b'shnayim u'shloishim mekaymis. There's actually three pshatim in this Gemara, one from Rashi, one from the Shiltis, and one from the Rabbeinu Chananah. I'll briefly mention all three, but we'll learn the Gemara with Rashi's pshat. Rashi learns b'shnayim u'shloishim mekaymis is very simple. If this is the neck of the animal, let's say, so you shecht it in the center of the neck, you shecht it towards the top, closer to the jaw, and you shecht it towards the bottom, closer to the chest of the animal. So there's three cuts. Now, one of them has to be roiv. So the center one was roiv, the kana, and the veshet. You had a cut up there, the cut below. Zogt, the Gemara, if you did that, Rav Paskins, that it's kosher. Amar Bino Rav, Ashoiklet, B'shnayim, U'shloishim, Mekaymos, Shechitasoi Ksher. That was Rashi's pshat. I'm just going to mention briefly the pshat of the Shiltis. The pshat of the Shiltis is you have a simon. It's round. It has a circumference. You cut instead of cutting one cut right through it, you cut a little bit on this side, a little bit on the other side, a little bit on the other side. But there's still space in between. So you're cutting it all at the same latitude in the same place, but you're cutting a little bit in three different places. That's the Shiltis' pshat. And the Rabbeinu Chananah's pshat is you cut the kana up high and the veshet down low, or vice versa. The problem with that is it's not b'shnayim or shloishim mekaymis, it's just shnayim mekaymis. The kana on one end, and the veshet on the other end. So let's stick with Rashi, where you have the center slice, which is your shchita, but there was a minor cut above your makom shchita and below your makom shchita. Rav says that's a kosher shchita. When they said this over to Shmuel, Kamrisa Kamei to Shmuel, Amar Ali, he told me it's not kosher because bo'inon shchita mefuras v'lekol. We know when you shech, the Gemara says Beisha shchita mirvach ravach. So as you cut it, the two ends pull apart, so you could see the whole incision is completely exposed as the knife cuts through it. If you made another incision above your shchita and the incision below your shchita, you don't have the pulling from the top and from the bottom anymore. Now when you cut in the center, it's going to remain closed. And it's not going to be an openly visible shchita. And Shmuel holds, but you know, shchita bufuras, you need that it should be an open shchita. As you cut it, the two sides pull apart. Veleka, you're not going to have. The Af, Rab Shimon ben Lakish Savar, Rab Shimon ben Lakish is also machmir like Shmuel, and he says, but you know, shchita bufuras. The Amar Rab Shimon ben Lakish, minayin l'shchita shi bufuras. How do you know that shchita has to be open? Shenemar chet shachut l'shoinem mirma diber. The pasuk is talking about lashon hara. The pasuk says it's like an arrow that's moving through the air, cutting. That's someone who speaks bad about people. And the pasuk goes on to say that he's a faker because when he faces the guy, he'll smile at him and make believe they're friends, and then behind his back he'll bashmutz him and bared him. Pasuk is saying lashon hara is like an arrow. When you do an aver normally, the aver is basher sham. You're doing the aver where you are. When you do an aver of lashon hara, it's like sending out a nuclear bomb, and you could destroy the whole world. There is a story in Lakewood that happened very recently. A beautiful restaurant opened up. One fellow ate in the restaurant and thought that it was a little bit expensive, so he took a picture of his receipt and he put it in all the different websites and Facebook. And within a month, this $1 million investment to start up this restaurant, he went bust. Why? Because one guy did a chetz shachut l'shoinam. He posted one thing derogatory on the website. It put the juk into everybody said that this restaurant is unreasonably expensive, and he bankrupted the guy before he ever had a shot. So we have to be very careful not to be a chetz shachut l'shoinam. Now, as far as its relevance to shchita, Rashi says, Chet shachut, the second line from the bottom, Shchita dumi de chet. Shchita has to be similar like an arrow. She'enei chaytech bebeis b'koimos. And the arrow cuts in one place. It doesn't cut in three places. So therefore the shchita has to be in one place, and this way it'll open up and it'll be mifu eres. Zog the heilige Gemara weiter. Mosiv Rabbi Lazar. Frek Rabbi Lazar Akash. Beis Eichsen Besakin. On Amid Beis, we're going to learn the Mishnah. And the Mishnah said, if two people are holding on to a sakin, and the Havamina of the Gemara, or maybe even the Maskana, but right now we're learning that two people each had their own knife. Two shoichdim, each one with a chalab, v'shoichdim, and they're shechting the same animal. Afilu echad milamayla v'echad milamata, even if it's the one shechting higher up and one shechting further down, shechidas eksheira. It's a mamash akash on Shmuel. Am I? V'aleka shchita mufaras. Once again, when you have multiple incisions, it doesn't open up. Amalei Rabbi Yirmiyah said that's not the pshat in the Mishnah. Two people holding onto a knife, meaning two different knives and two different incisions. No, that's not what the Mishnah means. That's kosher. Mishnah saying b'sakin echad u'shnei b'nei adam. You're talking about a long knife that has a handle on either end, and they're going back and forth. One person on one end, one on the other end. So avada de shchita was only in one place, and in fact, that's going to be a kosher shchita. Amalei Rababa, so Rababa said that's going to be very schwer, because we have a brisa that explains the Mishnah, and the way the brisa explains the Mishnah, it seems to indicate that the brisa understood the Mishnah that it's speaking with two shachtim with two knives, not two shachtim sharing one knife, because this is what the brisa says. Iyachi hainu the Tani Allah. The brisa says it's kosher when you shecht with two knives. Why? Ein choishes shema yitrivu zalzeh. You're not choished that these two people will make a treif one on the other. What does that mean? Zok the Gemara, if the case of the brisa, of the Mishnah, is two knives in the hands of two people, shapir. There, I understand what the possible concern is. I'm shechting higher up on the neck. You're shechting lower on the neck. I'm going to think to myself, you're probably going to shecht roiv simonim, so I won't. And therefore, each shechit will think the other guy's cutting roiv, so he won't cut roiv. And then the animal will end up being an avela. Kamash malon, the Mishnah that it's kosher, the ein choshesh. So that works out really nice if you learn that it's speaking with two shachtim, each with his own chalaf. If you're going to learn, we're speaking about one long knife, and the two shachtim are holding it on each end. There's no such a chasarn. Then the chasarn is one guy might push down too hard. That should be the chashash. And therefore, the Brisa should have said that the chiddush of the Mishnah is that you're not choshesh, that if two people are holding onto the same knife, one guy might push too hard. Amalei Rababin, okay, not a problem. We'll change the brisa. Tani ein chosheshin shema yidroisu zeh al zeh. Okay, let's turn over onto Amid Beis.
What?
Frank the Gemara on Lamed Amid Beis. Mosiv Rababin. We have another kasha. It says in the Mishnah, Shachet es haveshet lamata, v'zakana lamayla, es haveshet lamayla, v'zakana lamata. You cut the veshet on the top, you cut the kon on the bottom, or vice versa. Now it's two different cuts. What does it say? Shchitas ekshera. According to Shmuel, according to Rish Lakish, who holds you need a shchita mufaras, amai, v'alaka shchita mufaras. You need a shchita mufaras, you don't have it. Zok the Gemara, who he answered, you know what pshat in the brisa is? That you cut the cotton up high and the vesh down low, or vice versa? It's b'shchita asuya kakolmas. It's a shchita that's on an angle, like a kolmas. You hold it on an angle. So therefore, when you're slicing down. So you cut through the cotton high up, and then you're moving further down as you get into the veshet. That's what it means. But that's still one incision, and it still opens up. So that would be a shchita mufuras. That's why it's kosher. Hahutura, there was an ox. The Ishrit Bishnayim Vishloishim Akoimos. Exactly this machloikis that we have, where Rav is matir and Shmuel and Rish Lakish holds it's usher, such a story actually happened. All Rabbi Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta. So Rabbi Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta took this meat, shokal mishufri shufri. He took and ate from the best of this meat. You see, clearly he holds it's a kosher meat, and it's a good shechita. Amalei Rab Zeir, so Rab Zeir told him, Lamadnu Rabbeinu, from the fact that our Rebbe ate this meat, it teaches us that he learns Mishnasenu b'shnei sakininu beis b'nei adam. He must have learned that the Mishnah that says it's kosher is even if it's shnei sakinim and beis b'nei adam. Because remember, according to Shmuel who answered, we had to say the Mishnah was speaking about one knife and two people pulling on a knife. But if you hold that you don't need a shechita mefuras, you can learn that the Mishnah is speaking with two knives and there was two incisions because you don't need a shechita mefuras. Gewaltig. Anu halacha. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Hichlid es hasakin bein simen lasimin upaskoi psula. What if you plunge the knife into the neck of the animal, in between the two simonim, and then you made chalot, and then you cut one. So let's look at Hichlit is hasakim ben simin l'simin. You take an animal, you plunge the knife into the animal, and then you poskai, and then you cut the one simin. So just to give us a good visual, the animal, if you're starting from the neck, not from the back of the neck, but from the throat, the first thing you hit is the kana, and then you hit the veshet, and then comes the gargaris, then comes the spine. So what if, instead of cutting the normal way, from the throat up, the kana first, and then the veshet, he plunged the knife in between the kana and the veshet, and then he sliced the veshet. Zog to Gemara, that would be psula, which means it would be an event. What about tachas ha'or? What if he plunged the knife in under the skin of the animal, but before the kana? So now the knife is plunged into the animal, the skin of the neck of the throat is outside, and his knife is right up against the kana, and there he starts shechting. There the halacha is tachas ha'or is kshero. There it's going to be kosher. Rashi tells us the reason for it is chalada, you can't plunge inside, is only in the arena of what's part of the shechita process. The skin of the neck of the animal has nothing to do with the shechita process. So the fact that you're plunged inside there and you didn't cut the skin of the throat, that would not be chalada, that wouldn't be relevant. Zog to Gemara, Mike,
without cutting the
was?
You can plunge in a knife without cutting the skin.
No, you'll have to puncture the skin, but if here's the neck. You don't cut this. You don't cut it normally. You stick it in through the side. So you do make a hole in the side to get behind the skin in front of the kana. So there will be a hole in the skin, but you're not slicing the skin as you're going through it to cut the kana.
It sounds like he started shechting and then he was machlid.
That's not pshat. Pshat is he plunged his knife in, he stabbed the animal, and he stabbed it so that his knife was now positioned between the skin of his throat, between the skin of the animal's throat and the kana. So Frag the Gemara Tanina, it's a Mishnah. Why do I need Rav to tell me this big bomb chiddush? It's a Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Oisha hichlid es hasakin tachas hasheni, meaning you first shechted the kana normally. You cut the neck of the animal properly, and you went through the kana. The normal thing to do at this point was to continue until you cut the veshet. But this Arba Chucham stopped. He pulled the knife out. He plunged it in between the spine and the veshet, and then he came back the opposite way and shechted the veshet from the back out. So it says in the Mishnah, Oishehichlin is Hasakin Tachas Hasheni Upaskoi, Rabbi Yishev Amar Nevela, Rabbi Kiva Amar Treifa. So we already know Hichlid behind one simon is a treif in the shchita. Why do I need Rav to tell me that? Dr. Gemara, there's a huge difference. Even masnizin havamina hanamili milamata lamayla. How are you shechting the veshet? Normally, you're supposed to shecht from the throat towards the veshet, towards the spinal cord. He didn't do that. When he cut the veshet, he dipped the knife in between the spinal cord and the veshet, and then he cut moving out. Why is it called milamata lamayla? I'm assuming because when they shechted, they had the animal lying on the floor, and the throat was up, and the spinal cord was at the bottom. So now he dips his knife in on top of the spinal cord, and he cuts milamata lamayla. He cuts up to cut the veshet. There's the loika ovid kederech shchita. That's not shechting the normal way that shchita is done. But we're discussing Rav's chiddush is aval milamayla lamata to ovid kederech shchita and mishaper. In Rav's case, what happened was you didn't shech the kana yet. You dipped in the knife and you shechted the veshet, but in the right way, because the knife was dipped in between the kana and the veshet, and you cut the veshet towards the spinal cord, which is the way you're supposed to do it, and then you took the knife out and you shechted the kana. So there, I need Rav to tell me that that's also a pasul shchita. Kamash v'lom. Zog to Gemara, what about tachas ha'or? Kshera, which we said earlier as well. But Beirav Omri Tachas Ha'or and Yedea. Beirav wasn't so sure that it was Kshera. Beirav says could be Tachas Ha'or, is also called Chalada. Ibailu, Lebeirav, according to Rav, who holds that the skin might be Chalada, even though it's not in the arena of Shchita, how broad will he consider it Chalada? What about Tachas Matlas now? What if you had a shmata wrapped tightly around the neck of the animal, and you dipped your knife into the shmata and you shechted? Is that also called chalada because it's all covered over? You're going to say, what does the matlas have to do with the animal? Well, I can ask you the same question. What does the ar have to do with the animal? It's not part of the shechita. So maybe Rav is machmer that even that would be a problem. Or even more than that, tzemer mesubach. Tzemer mesubach means dirt, wool pieces got stuck onto his neck. They don't even belong. You're going to rip them off. And you stuck your knife underneath the tzemer mesubach. Will that be chalada? Mahu. And the Gemara answers, Teku. Boy Rapapa. Rapapa is another side. And this is a firestorm, this last little line. Hichlid b'miyat simon Mahu. What does he mean chalada b'miyat simon? And the Gemara Teku. Let's look how Rashi teaches it. This is a massive machlokes Rashi and the other Rishonim, where Rashi is stark machmir, and the other Rishonim argue. So let's see Rashi. Hichlid b'miyat simonim. Li'achar sheshachat rubai behechsher. After you already shechted the animal, not a carbon, after you shechted roiv shnei simonim, everything is perfect. You could have stopped there, but you continued and you made chalot. Mi amrina, do you say, ha yishtachet shaper b'roiv simonim? Once you shechted right, the animal's kosher and nothing else matters. Oy dilma kula chado shchitei. Or maybe once you shech the whole thing, you look at the whole shchita. And if you look at the whole shchita, part of it went with chalada. Vis bechalada, uvamiyut kama. What happens if the first miyut was bechalada? Not after you shechted roiv, but before you shechted roiv. They're pshitin along the nevela vada. Now that's a very big chiddush. So Zokt Rashi, teku. What's teku mean? Uluchomer. We have to be machmer. If you made chalada after you shechted roiv simonim, Rashi showed you have to be machmer. What about by a grama? Zokt Rashi, this same conclusion of teku, which we need to go l'chumra, that the Gemara applies to chalada, equally applies to the other psulei shchita. Uvegabe hagrama nami Zokt Rashi, the Pirka Kama, we discussed it in the first pair, and we had a machlokes. Bein shachat shlish, v'higrim shlish, v'shachat shlish, bein higrim shlish, v'shachat shlish, v'higrim shlish, and bein shachat shnei shlish, v'higrim shlish. We had a shiloh by all these cases. If you remember, Rav Huna was very machmir, and he holds even if you shechted roiv, and the last third you went bagrama, Rav Huna holds that's going to be treif. Zokt Rashi, in all these cases, Misavkalon, Dilma, Svirlon, Karabonon, Trufoi, Dimitrofi, B'chalchadim, we have to be Mesopik. Maybe we pass like the Rabban in the world, this is all treif. All those cases that we discussed in the first parak, the Zok Rashi, L'chumra. We have to pass the L'chumra. But Frekt Rashi, I got a little bit of a problem with this very chumridik approach that I'm taking due to the teku. We learned just yesterday, Shachat Chatzi Gageres. If you shechted half the Gageres, remember, half the Gageres, even if it's chopped out, it's not possible yet. It's not a trefa until Renik of Rav Gageres. So Shachat Chatzi Gageres, V'shabah, and you made Shehiyah, V'gomra, and then you finish the Shechita Kshera. V'ukim the Ba'if, the Gemara said that's referring to an Oif, V'achsharana, and we said it's a kosher Shechita, Mimanasha. If you hold like Rav that Mechta Mechta's Karoiv, well, you already shechted it. Ha'avad laruba. The second half, you made Shehiyah on. How come it doesn't passel? Alma de Mechi Avad Ruba Bekashris. Once you shechted Roy Bekashris, Loy Chayish Lepsula de Meyuta. We're not Chayish to the fact that there was Shehiyah before you did the second half of the Shechita. So, Frek Rashi, I said if you did the Chalada after you shechted Roiv, if you did that Grum after you shechted Roiv, it's possible. So, how come Shia after you shecht Roiv wouldn't possible? Zokt Rashi, Loi Samchinen Ahu Shinuya. That answer that the Gemara gave is not a Liba de Hilchasa. The Dichihu, the Dachya. So, at the end of the day, Rashi has a major chumrah that if you had a Psul Shchita, whether it was a Grama, whether it was Chalada, whether it was Shia, at the second half of this, after you checked Roiv, that is a teku in our Gemara, and it's going to be a chumrah, and Rashi would say that's treif. Tosfos vehemently argues on Rashi. The Tosfos says, Pirush B'Kuntrus b'miut basra, avo b'miut kama pshitalon davin avela. And Rashi says this same conclusion of our Gemara by Chalada would apply equally to the sugya of Hagrama Nami Pasuk. Since there's a teku here, it's l'chumra. Zok Tosfos, the Rivam argues, and the Rivam says the whole Shayla over here is only on the first third, but Avada, if you made Chalada at the end, it's not going to be a problem. And Tosfos has a whole arichas about it. But Tosfos, Rabbi Tam, they're very much arguing on Rashi, and they hold once you check with the right Simonim, we wouldn't be worried about what happens afterwards. Zok the Helig Mishnah weiter. Hashoichet beige Russian ke'echad. Someone shechted, he lined up two animals side by side, and he had a long knife, and he shechted two animals together. Shechitasei kshera. Now, if you remember, a couple of blot ago, we learned the Mishnah at the beginning of the second pair that twice mentioned that Roiv of the Simon is Kekulai. And the Gemara asked, why do I need the Mishnah to say the same halacha twice? So the Gemara said, one is talking about Chullin and one is talking about Kachim. Then the Gemara asked, is the Reisha speaking about Chullin and the Sefer about Kachim, or vice versa? So the Gemara, in one of the different rayas, was that the Sefer has to be speaking by Kachim. Why? Because the very next Mishnah that we just learned says, Ha-shoichet Beis Rosh Ke'echad. Mashma l'chatchil, you're not allowed to. Only b'di'evet it will be kosher. Why? Because of the Gemara we learned earlier today from Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon that it says l'tzorchem tizbachuhu l'chatchila by kachim. You cannot shecht more than one animal at a time. So Zok Gemara, from the fact that it says Hashoichet di'eved, it must be that the Sefer is speaking about kachim. That's just a little chazar, but we learned a couple of days ago. Zok the Mishnah Hashoichet beis Rosh Ke'echad shchidas k'sheira. What about Shnaim Oichsen, not on the talis? Shnaim Oichsen besakin. Vishoichtim, that was the case we just discussed. Afilu echad l'mayla. Ve'echad l'mata, and we'll see what that means a little later. Shechitas k'sheira. What happens if you made drasa? He did this a roish mevasachas. You chopped the head off. Psula, that's an avela, that's drasa. What happens if you were going shechting back and forth? You didn't go drasa. How you shoichet? The hit is a Rosh B'Vasach. What happened is normally you go back and forth with the knife. But he just went in one direction. Let's say he started with his arm stretched out and he pulled it towards him. By the time he just went in one direction, it cut through the whole simonim. The hit is a Rosh. Would that be a good shchita? Zog to Gemara, yes. Now, the Gemara is going to tell us moli taver means if the length of the knife is a full neck length, in addition to the main neck length, so meaning it's two neck lengths. So let's say the length of a neck, if you measure the diameter, let's say it's 12 inches. If the sakin is 24 inches, so then you could pull the sakin all the way 24 inches. It's possible that it would do the complete shchita in one movement, and it wouldn't be drasa. What about the yeshayche? The hit is bez roshim b'vasachas. What if he was shechting two animals together, and also he only pulled the knife in one direction? Im yesh b'sakin moli tzavar echad. If the sakin is as big as one neck, now of course it doesn't mean one neck. It's not even enough to shech two animals. It means one neck length over and above the two neck lengths. So in this case, it would be 36 inches. Then it's ksher. When do we say that if the knife is not long enough? The animal is on the vela. If he only went in one direction. If he's going back and forth, he's constantly moving the knife and he's not making drasa. Even if he's moving just a little bit back and forth, then afilu be'izmul ksher. Even if you have a small little knife, as long as you're slowly moving back and forth around the neck of the animal, that will be a kosher shchita. How do you know that shchita doesn't mean just chopping the neck? How do you know shchita means pulling the knife back and forth? Amar Shmuel Amar Kra, familiar pasuk. Chetz shachet l'shaynam mirma diber. Shechting is like an arrow, and the arrow is moving. An arrow cuts while it's moving. So we learned two things in the pasuk of the Chetz shachet l'shaynam.
The arrow only goes one way.
Was?
The arrow only goes one way.
Right, and you only have to go one way. The Mishnah said that if you have long enough of a knife, even one way is good enough. And the Chadama. But it has to be moving. The main point, it has to be moving. We learned earlier from the same pasuk of Chetz shachet l'shaynam that it has to be a shchita mufaras. It can't just puncture a hole through. Okay, Chetz shachet l'shaynam mirma diber. Right? Is that what we learned from? Is that what we learned from Chetz shachet l'shaynam on Amar Aleph? The Gemara wanted to know, how do you know? What was the Gemara looking for? I forgot the Gemara. Let me go back to Amar Aleph.
Oh yeah.
So what's learning of Amar Aleph?
Yeah, Shmuel. Shmuel.
Then that's been for us. Okay, good. So Zog to Gemara. Tanu Devei Rabbi Shmuel v'shachat ein v'shachat elo u'mochash. The lashon shchita is a lashon of tzin, moving. Where do you see that? The Chenuimer Zov Shachat, which is describing the gold kalim that Shlomo Melech had, and it was threads. And the way you get the thread is by stretching the gold, and it becomes a thread. So you see, shachat means to tzin. V'leimer, we have another pasuk of Chetz shachet l'shaynam mirma diber. Frank Gemara, my v'leimer, why do we need the second pasuk if we have the first pasuk? The chitei mezom shachet doesn't mean that it's stretched. Maybe it means that it's spun. Shenitfek achut hu tashma. That's where we have the second pasuk of Chetz shachet l'shaynam. Now we're going to have a fascinating Gemara. Listen to this. Rava have a boduk legira l'Rabbi Yochanan bar Tachlifa. Rava would be boduk the arrows for Rabbi Yochanan bar Tachlifa, who's obviously a hunter. And look what Rabbi Yochanan bar Tachlifa did. V'shachat ba'oifa ba'ad the parach. He would literally shoot an arrow at flying birds, and he must have been such an expert marksman that the arrow couldn't go through the neck. That would be chalada. It had to brush up along the front of the neck and slice one salmon perfectly. And he was able to do it. Frank Gemara, how do you know V'dilma with chalada? Maybe it was chalada. He finds a dead bird. How does he know chalada didn't happen? So Gemara, very simple. Chazinon, you would check, and he saw that the feathers of the neck were sliced through. If it was chalada, then there would just be a hole at the side of the neck. But the neck feathers were sliced through, it's a raya that it actually sliced it from the throat. Can you imagine? Azam and Tal?
Those
They saw the gitfi demiframi. The neck feathers were sliced through. Frank the Gemara, okay, so maybe it was a kosher shchita. But for boy kisa, you gotta do kisi adam. He's not doing kisi adam. Zakt Gemara v'chitem in the machzulay. If you're going to say, yeah, he'll go find the bird when it falls down, it'll be in a puddle of blood, and then you can cover over the blood. That's not good enough because you have to have earth underneath the blood too. And how is he going to know where it's going to fall? The Omer Abzeir Omer Av Shaykei Tzarach Sheyitin Offer Lomata the Offer Lomaila Shenemar v'Chiseu Be'Ofar. Doesn't v'Chiseu offer? Does v'Chiseu Be'Ofar mean it has to be sandwiched in offer? Loinemar Elo Be'Ofar Melamed Shashaykei Tzarach Sheyitin Offer Lomata v'Offer Lomaila. And for the Gemara, you're right. The entire theater where he was going to go hunting it, the Mazmin Leila offer to Kulapiska. He made sure to spread offer on the entire area where he was doing his hunting. So Mamela, when he would shoot the bird with the arrow, the bird would fall down, the blood would go on the offer, and then he would come and cover it over. Nervoim. There's a famous story with the Chavetz Chaim, where a Bocher was being drafted into the Russian army. He was going to be a cantonist. He's giving up his Yiddishkeit. And the father went crying to the Chavetz Chaim, Rebbe, help me. So the Chavetz Chaim says, was is so schlecht that your son should join the army? At their land in Shisen. What's wrong with that? So this guy was like, his mind was blown. The Chavetz Chaim wasn't concerned. Joined until he got drafted. Meanwhile, the Second World War started, and this guy was lost in the forest, and he was captured by anti-Semitic Polish partisans who wanted to kill him. And he told them, don't kill me. I could be very valuable to you as a sharpshooter. I could be a sniper for you. I'm an excellent shot because of the training that he got in the Russian army. So they said, yeah, really? They took him to a really high apple tree. They took him far, far away. And said, we want you to shoot the top apple. And they gave him a rifle, and he shot it, and he hit it right on. So then he got what the Chavetz Chaim meant. Because by him learning how to shoot, that ultimately saved his life in the Holocaust. So Baruch Hashem, we were zoiche to finish Daf Lamed. And tomorrow, Be'ez Hashem, if the Yetzirah tells us tomorrow morning, oh, you're so tired, sleep in, we're going to tell him, Loi, mitan aleph, because that's the daf that we're up to.
So that's not Sakasha on Esav, how he went to hunt for the...
What's that?
It's Esav, when he went to hunt for, he could have done the same thing.
Oh, maybe he was doing... Yeah, but he didn't have who was biting the knife for him?
Huh?
He didn't have Rebbezer to be biting the knife for him.
Yitzchak.
Maybe Yitzchak was biting it for him.
Did you have
I don't know, if I was Yitzchak and Esav had an arrow, I would probably stay far away from him.
I would also.
Rabbi Model once said it over Motzei Shabbos by the Uvas Abunim. Rabbi Model, he's finished it differently. I said he shot the apple and he hit the apple. Rabbi Model said he shot the apple and poof, applesauce.
You still remember the story?
Avada, I made a notion.
But the applesauce is probably chalada then.
Yeah, the applesauce was chalada in the Chanami.
Yosy, if you stick in the knife and that's called halada, so what's the hagram? I'm mixed up.
Hagram means you're shechting not in the right place. So either above the tabois or below the tabois, or according to certain shitas, even in the middle of the tabois.
Right.
That means you're out of the makom shchita. Chalada means you're in the makom shchita, but you're going from the inside out. You're not shechting. You're not making a clean cut through.
To repeat what you just.
Chalada means it's hidden, right?
It's hidden. That's right. So you stick the knife inside, and then you shech.
Yeah.
You shech from the inside out.
Okay. Shkoyach.
Tomorrow, are we doing here?
Tomorrow I'll be in shul.
Yeah.
Even though we might not have such good internet, but I figure tonight I'm home anyway, so I'd rather be sure that we have good internet.
I only saw it after I came here. I only saw your message.
I'm sorry. I sent it out at like 10:06. Like right after the Zman. After 72.
My phone holds Rebbeinu Tam, son.
No, I sent it
It
out
was-
after Rebbeinu Tam. I'm also marked with Rebbeinu Tam. So I sent it out 10:02 is Rebbeinu Tam. I sent it out as fast as possible after 10:02 because I was hoping that I would catch you before you would go.
Okay.
Okay, I get the vach.
Jetzt wacht.